Today, I'm going to show you how to create this website prototype using Figma. And it's fully equipped with micro interactions and even animations between different pages. Hello everybody, Gary Simon here. It is the new year, 2021, so I'd like to refresh a lot of my courses, and it really makes sense to do that for Figma because Figma has released a lot of updates in the last year. And so what is Figma? So first of all, before we get there, who is this crash course for? Well, it's somebody who's an absolute beginner and also maybe somebody who is more seasoned, and maybe you're going to learn a thing or two in terms of the workflow and the approaches. All right, so Figma is a UI UX design and prototyping tool. What that basically means is before a website or an app can go live and work in the browser or on different devices, you really need to come up with an idea of how it's going to look and also function. And that's the purpose of Figma and other tools like it. So if you go to figma.com, we'll see that there is a pricing option, but it's free to start. You can have up to 3 projects, 30-day version history, yada, yada, yada. And then if you want to get more professional about it, which you don't have to, it's $12 per editor per month. So the very low cheaping, did I say low cheaping? Very low pricing. And I'm going to show you real quickly, just again, basically the fictional website that we're going to create here using Figma. And so if you click here, we have like our work section. So we're going to do a subpage design. We're going to do hover-based interactions. I'll show you exactly how to set that up. Also using Smart Animate, we can create really cool page transition animations. And so I'm going to be talking about 2 things primarily. I'm going to be talking about, number 1, is how to use the app, how to use the tools that are in the app of Figma. And then number 2, UI design principles and fundamentals. Of those 2, it's a 10%, 90% battle. What I mean by that is understanding how to use the app and the features is only 10% of the battle. Knowing how to apply them and developing an eye for UI design is 90% of the battle. So if that's something that you're really interested in and you want to be able to produce great designs that look and function well, definitely check out my site, which right now at the moment is up and coming, DesignCourse.com. Enter your email to be notified when I release this service. It's going to be awesome. It's basically going to be a monthly subscription service where you learn UI UX design through UI tests, live workshops, challenges, full courses, and more. So that's going to be releasing here sometime soon in 2021. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Now, before we begin, you should definitely check out this video's sponsor, which is Scrimba.com. Now, while you're about to watch my Figma crash course, you can learn UI design by taking my UI design bootcamp at Scrimba, which is an interactive code-based platform. At Scrimba, you don't just watch videos. No. You're actually able to modify code in the browser while you learn. My course on UI design features over 100 lessons that are specifically tailored to help you become an awesome UI designer, and they're packed with interactive challenges. So click the very first link here in the YouTube description to access my course along with many others for a very low monthly fee. All right, so we're going to start here. Go to figma.com, of course, create an account, and the first thing I'm going to do is click this little plus icon at the top, and that will create a new document, as you'll see in a second once it gets all loaded up. All right, so this part could be a little bit confusing for anybody who's brand new to Figma because what's going on? I can't design. What is happening? That's because we want to come up here. We're going to click on this frame, and you're going to see under Design on this right section. And let me see if I can get things a little bit bigger so you can see what I'm doing. Depending on what you're trying to design for, you can create and start off with these artboards that are predefined in terms of width and height and your dimensions essentially. For me, if it's like a website, I prefer to start with the website first in desktop. That way I know exactly what I want it to look like on the largest experience that people can view the website on, and then I can kind of go work in reverse, go down to tablet size if I want to design and prototype for a tablet, and then also for a phone. You don't always have to do that. You could work opposite if you want. I will say this, for front-end development, when it comes to HTML, CSS, and responsive design, you want to work always from mobile first. But I'm not going to get into that because that's a different respect. But because obviously we're just focusing on UI design here. So for me, I'm just going to choose, choose this desktop right here. All right, so once we click it, we'll see now we have this area in which we have this frame named as desktop-1. You can double click that, by the way, right here, and you can adjust the name if you wish. We can call this home page because that's what we're going to start off with. And so at this stage, if you want, you can you can select it and you can adjust the width over here. So for me, I kind of like to go like to 1920 and then do 1080 for my height. So it's even a bigger desktop size. You may even want to go larger than that because with 4K monitors, which are pretty prevalent now, you can get quite a bit larger. So that's up to you entirely. So now at this point, I will just very briefly go over the UI here of Figma, but there's not a lot to, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over bells and whistles. I want to give things context by covering the actual project. But nonetheless, when you select an object, for instance, if I take this rectangle tool, you can see that in the right panel right here, we have properties that are specific to the element that you selected. Same thing with the canvas artboard, like you could change the background by changing the fill color here. You can also do a lot of other things like auto layout, which we'll get into, alignment, all that. We'll get into prototyping as well. And over here on the left portion is your layers and your assets, depending on which tab you've selected. So you'll see once we start to add more elements, this is going to get filled up, and you'll see how the layers panel works, and we'll get into that briefly. Outside of that, we have a few tools that you can draw things with, basic shapes. We have the dreaded pen tool. We also have the type tool. We can make comments, all that good stuff. So what we're going to do now is just start designing this homepage, and in doing so, you'll start to learn how to use the app. So I'm trying to remember to tell myself at the beginning of this video, crash course, I need to reiterate, it's 10% tools and knowledge of the app, and it's 90% everything else. So when it comes to UI UX design, that 90% is understanding UI design fundamentals and how to make things look good. You can know every single feature of this tool of Figma or any other app, but be a horrible designer. Just knowing the tool enough itself isn't enough. So let's go ahead, and sometimes when I'm designing a new site, I might start with the navigation at the top because it's the very first thing that's seen. Sometimes I'll start with the background. I think I want to start with a background. So if you go to uigoodies.com here in a different tab, you have all these different categories, and there's basically just linking to other resources. If we come down to like patterns and backgrounds, if you want to have an interesting pattern or background for your website, perhaps one of these resources would be good for you. And we're going to use one of these. I'm going to use what are called subtle patterns. Now, this site's really cool. It's been around for quite a while, but they have all these cool sort of patterns. So you click preview, it's going to show you what it looks like on the actual website as well. And so you can go through these and you can experiment with so many. I believe the one I wanted is somewhere on page 3. Yeah, this one. I like this one. It's very subtle. There's not a lot of contrast, so you can still put text and stuff on top of it. I like it. So if we click download, it's going to download. As you can see, I already downloaded it once before in preparation. And here's WinRAR. So if we get in there, we want to take this graphic right here, and you can just kind of just drag it over to your desktop, and I'll replace it because it's already there. And so we're going to use that as a background here. So we select the artboard here. or the canvas, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to change the fill from a solid to an image. So we choose image, and we're going to go, as we can see, oh, there it is, Greek vase or vase. And we could just choose tile, and we can increase the size, of course. Maybe right around here. That looks pretty good, around 400 by 400. And we can click off of this, and there we go. We now have a repeating background. Of course, you saw some other options there. You could change the exposure, contrast, saturation. So that's really cool as well. I'm happy with what it looks like right here. So we're going to assume that the project we're designing for is going to be for kind of like I guess a design service of some sort. I know a lot of you are aspiring UI, UX designers. Perhaps you're going to have your own portfolio or something. So we'll just take that as the approach we're going to go with. So let's start with the navigation. I'm going to take the type tool, and I'm just going to click up over here, and I'm going to just type in my channel name, DesignCourse. This could be your business name or whatever you want it to be. I'm going to use a font called Poppins. I like it a lot. Of course, we're really small here. So we're going to take the size. So if we click down here, we have some preset sizes. Or if you wish, you can use your keyboard up and down arrow keys after selecting into this value where it's highlighted blue. And we can just, you know, in a finite sense, increase the size as such. I also want it to be bold, so it really stands out well. And we're also just going to choose a primary color. So when it comes to color and contrast and UI UX design, you're going to find that you want to have a primary color, one that you use the most throughout. And you can have secondary colors as well, but generally speaking, you want to keep them to a minimal, and you really want to reinforce a primary color. And your primary color should be something that works well with, you know, the predominant background on your site and all that. So there's many different colors we could choose at this point. I think I'm just going to choose this blue right here. So the hex color code is 0078E7. And you can enter that if you want to follow in. You could choose your own primary color. Like this would work just as well as a primary color. This would work. There's so many different shades and obviously colors that you can use. So I'm just going to use this one right here. And what we're going to do is just say that's our logo because it's simple enough. Usually you can have an icon or not. This is just a word mark type logo. Now let's talk about alignment and position. And so now we're going to get into like the UI design fundamentals considerations. Would this make sense to put this all the way up here? I'm going to say absolutely not. You want to have white space, as it's called. You want to push things around in such a way that they have enough room and they're not kind of like pushed up against edges. And that could be the edge of your actual, like against the browser edge on the top of it or to the left. You want it to be pushed. You want it to have enough room to breathe, as I like to say. And that's all about white space. And white space becomes more important once we start to add in other elements like a navigation. So let's go ahead and add a navigation with this as well. So I could start over, you know, click here and then just type in like a navigation name like home or whatever. Or we could just do Control D and then that automatically will replicate that line and that duplicates it. So if I double click right here, I'm just going to type in home. And in terms of navigations and where your navigation resides in the nav bar or the header up here, a lot of times people will kind of put the first link of the navigation right here, and then I'll have another one here, here, and here. So the logos usually can be left aligned, and then the navigation's right aligned over here. I'm going to take a little bit different approach. Sometimes you can have navigation right next to the logo, but you still need to have good white space between it. And we also have to reinforce another UI design fundamental called visual hierarchy. Right now, these are styled exactly the same, right? So if I were to duplicate this and create like our work or something, another link. By the way, you don't have to follow along. I'm going to back up in a second. In our work and then maybe services, there's a lack of what's called visual hierarchy here. The only thing that separates this from these is there's a little bit more white space in between here. But you really want to reinforce that hierarchy more so in order to differentiate the items between each other. So you do that in a visual sense. And so one thing we could do, we could change this to black. All right, now they're quite a bit different from each other. So we're reinforcing that visual hierarchy even more. We could also change it from font weight bold to regular. All right, there we go. Now these are drastically different. We could even make it a smaller font size and put this center aligned like right around here. So you could do all these things to reinforce the visual hierarchy, and it's very important to get those things right. All right, so I'm going to delete those two, and yeah, we'll say like around 20 will be good for the size there. And what we want to do now is we want to create, we want to use a feature called auto layout. So what I'm going to do is click on this frame right here. I'm just going to kind of left click and drag an area out right around here. It doesn't really matter. We can always adjust things further. And I'm going to take also our home. So the home is inside of our frame. And then what I'm going to do is hit Shift A. All right. So for auto layout, we can see we have this auto layout section that has been added right here. So we can, the first option here are these two arrows, vertical direction or horizontal direction. You'll see what that means here in a second once we create a secondary item. Next up, we have right here, and this is the spacing between items. Again, we have to give this more context because there's only one item, but that creates white space between the child elements inside of the frame. So as you can see, we have a frame, and then inside of here we have a home. And let's just go ahead and duplicate one right here. So now we have two link or menu items. I'm planning on having three, so let's just like hit Control D to replicate those. And now if I adjust this, for instance, using the keyboard, you'll see that they're spread out evenly now. Same thing right here. If we click down, it's just going to make it a vertical list, which is great for something like a mobile layout. All right. So at this point, if we expand this, these don't fill up and take the space, right? That's what we want. We want to be able to just quickly have a way to move this container in and out, and these will respond appropriately inside. So the way we do that is we click on this, and then in this little section right here where it comes to aligning it, we could first align things to the center, but then we want to choose space between. All right, so now if we pull that out, guess what? We have space between. We can also then come in. Let's make this second link our work. And this one will be services or something like that. And it maintains the correct amount of white space between all of these. If we didn't use auto layout, we would have had more work to do to try to create the right amount of white space between each one of these elements. We would have to manually adjust the space between each other. So use auto layout in these component-based aspects as much as possible. And we're going to do it a few more times as well. So I think I'm pretty happy with this. A simple little layout right here. And then to really complete the top nav bar, because when it comes to UI design and the fundamentals, having a good layout should really feel complete. And what I mean by that is we have basically a container defined right here. Then there's a certain amount of white space that occurs between the first element and the left side of the browser or the device or whatever. And so we want to have that same symmetry created over here, the same amount of white space. So over here we could put a small call to action, like get a quote, all right, for design services or something like that. So to do that, let's go ahead and create an actual button, not just a link like these. These aren't really, I wouldn't really call these buttons because they're not encased in anything like a pill-shaped container or whatever. So let's do that. What I'm going to do is take this tool right here. And so if we can always click down, we can change these to, you know, an ellipse or polygon or whatever. I want a rectangle. And let's just drag out a container. We're going to make it white. And of course, we won't be able to see it then because the background's almost already white. Now, to zoom in and out, by the way, I didn't go over that. Control in your mouse scroll wheel, by the way. If you want to pan, use the space bar and left click. All right, so inside of here, we're going to go ahead and just going to put some type, get a quote. All right. So now, if I zoom up, we'll see these little radius buttons. We're going to take those and drag them all the way in to create that pill-shaped container. And we're going to take this and this. So I'm going to hold Shift, select both of them, and then we're going to hit Shift-A to do auto layout. All right, so now if I left-click this, it's not behaving like I want it to because we want this to stay in the center of this element. So again, we come up over here, space between. Now it works, and we can even adjust this size as well. So it stays vertical, center, and horizontal. Now, just so we could see this button background a little bit more, make sure we get into our frame here, and we want to adjust this so that we can add an effect. So anything you select has this effects options down here. We click the plus icon, and now by default, it's adding a drop shadow, which is what we want, but there's other things that you can add, like layer blurs and background blurs and inner shadows and all of that. I don't like exactly how this is styled. This soft sort of, I mean, it would work, but and it does help us see that overall container, but I'd rather make adjustments to it. So the effect settings is that little icon. And now we can change the X position, which is at 0, like if we want to offset it on the X axis. The Y axis we have is 4. So let's just do like 1, 1, and a blur of 2. So now it's really subtle if you get in there. And that's what I like. When it comes to shadows, I don't like to overdo it. That's something that used to be a thing a long time ago. So now let's go ahead and get this adjusted. We want to make sure it's centered where it needs to be. You want to make sure you can eyeball. It's okay to have an even amount of white space here as you do here. And the one thing I would change about this call to action is that I would make it stick out a little bit more. You could do a couple things in order to achieve that. You could take the background, for instance, and we can make it our primary color. And then we can make the text white and bold. So now this button really stands out like a proper call to action. Or you can make it less subtle, or more subtle. What am I doing? What I would do, because I'm already planning on having a big call to action here and I don't want these two to compete with each other, but I do want this to stand out more than the other elements up here really. What I will do is change this back to white, but I'm going to take the text and we'll keep the text bold, but also our primary color. So now it stands out a little bit more by making that text bold and that blue color. All right, so at this point, we're going to consider this navigation done, or this header really, or the navbar. What I want to do now is focus on the headline and the subheadline. So being that this is a design for a homepage of like a SaaS, like a software as a service or whatever, I really want to stress that you should have a really good ad copy, and that's achieved through a strong headline. All right, let's create the headline right now. I talk about this a lot in my live streams when it comes to choosing good ad copy. So now we're kind of into the marketing territory. Because ad copy is so important. It's the first thing people read within, a second when people get to your site. A lot of people, especially those who are starting out, like for their portfolios or whatever, they'll put like front-end developer, UX designer, or something like that. And they'll be literal about what it is. But when it comes to ad copy and marketing 101, You need to stress benefits over features. A feature is a UX designer or a UI designer. That's a feature of you. How are you going to benefit people? So choosing good ad copy is thinking in terms of benefits and not features, especially when it concerns at least the headline. So I'm going to specify expert design services for cheap. Now, this is still not a great headline because it's kind of still descriptive, right? It's kind of like a feature. Let's change that up, but first let's improve the appearance of this headline. Right now, as it stands, this is really small. Yeah, it's a really bold, but we're in the realm of visual hierarchy again. This line, this headline is way more important for this page than the navigation, all right? Because we want this to be the thing that really catches people's eye. It's something to read, something to help sell the service. So the main way you do that is through size. So we'll take this and we'll boost this up big time, like up to there. I'd say that's actually a pretty good size, 70 or so. We can also adjust other things about either your type, like the line height. Like if I think it's spaced out a little bit too far, I might just bring that up a little bit. Again, I may extend this down. And right around there looks pretty good, in my opinion. So expert design services for cheap, that's not bad. It's certainly better than UI, UX design services, expert design services for cheap, but you could definitely improve this. Like we make your business, oops, if I can type, look great. All right, now that is a lot better in my opinion. All right, so at this point, this is a good headline. Everything is solid so far about our design in terms of the composition and the layout, color and contrast, alignment. Again, like when we're talking alignment, I haven't talked about yet, but alignment would be, how are these items aligned in respect to one another? Like if I push this down a little bit and this over here, look how it throws off the flow of the layout. You want things to be laid out in a way that is consistent and accurate and makes sense. Let me back up there. Just backing up, you can see how much better it is. Like if I took this and offset it a little bit here, a little bit strange because we have a column defined by the little left part of the D where this starts, and then this is offset over here. Now sometimes you can go in and you could push this in way over there and it would still work, but to keep things simple and definite, you want to make sure that where this starts is where that starts. So now they start on exact same column or line right here. All right, so let's have a subheadline. You don't always have to have a subheadline. Your subheadline can be beneath it and smaller. And again, we need to reinforce the visual hierarchy, make this quite a bit smaller, maybe even make it regular. And maybe even change the color, maybe make it like gray. All right, of course you want to use different ad copy. We could say award-winning design services. This could work. We could also put on top. All right, so award-winning design, let's just go with that. And what we can do is change the letter case to uppercase. Let's make it bold. And let us also change the spacing, the letter spacing between each other. Let's also make it smaller. There we go. And maybe even decrease the contrast a little bit, but not too much. So this is a sub-headline approach where it goes above the main headline. And this is something you see often. It's a certain aesthetic, and I like it. We can even go a little bit smaller if you wanted to. But I think this looks pretty solid right there. The thing that we want to catch people's eye, of course, is this big bold text. So we can do other small things just to introduce some other tools like the pen tool. I'm not going to do anything crazy. You can do an entire video tutorial series on the pen tool and learning how to use it. The pen tool, of course, has been around in many different apps like Photoshop, Illustrator, and they all pretty much are operated in the same way for the most part. But how would we underline this? Like create a cool sort of underline. Well, let's left click once. So now we have an anchor point here. And then let's say we want it to end right here. We could just end it right there, hit escape, and then make it bold and blue. But let's give it a little bit of what's called a Bezier curve. So if I back up a couple times with Control Z, we can left click and drag this time. Now we can escape that, and then we can make it our primary color. And then of course we want to make it a lot thicker. Oh, that looks good. All right. So notice what are called the end caps. So if I exit out of there, we could see that the end caps, it has like a flat end caps right here. If we want to make those rounded, we can go ahead and click on this. And then for the join, we can just click this round. Whoop, or cap. Let's see, where am I at? There we go, round right there. So now we have nice round sort of underline. All right, so that doesn't look too bad. And again, you can come in afterwards and you can, scale it and all that good stuff. All right, so I like this so far for the headline. Now let's talk about a call to action. When it comes to the landing page of your service or your site or whatever it is, you should always have a call to action, as it's called. So a call to action could be as simple as clicking a button, telling them like to click here or whatever, although that's bad ad copy. Don't ever put click here. Or filling out a form, like, to get them started, like putting their email or something. It could be a search bar. It could be a up and down animated little scroll indicator, letting people know that you want them to scroll down. Whatever the case may be, you want to have some sort of call to action. So for us, we're just going to have a button-based call to action where, and this comes into the UX design. You have to really determine and find out what your users want the most. What is it that they want to see the most? What's the first thing they want to see? And that's done through testing and getting feedback from your visitors. But ultimately, you start off by making an educated guess, at least for the purpose of prototyping and design. And I'm going to say they probably want to see our work first, right? They don't want to hire somebody whose work looks like crap. So they want to see the work. What are you capable of? And so what I'm going to do is create another button. So we'll have a button here. And our button, when it comes to your call to action, you really want to draw attention to it. So it needs to stick out well. So you have a couple things at play here. If you really want it to stand out a lot, then we're talking about something of visual hierarchy, right? And also you achieve that visual hierarchy and you give it prominence and importance or real estate, whatever you want to call it. You do that through your UI design fundamentals, such as your color, your contrast, your scale, like the size of things, and all of that. So we are going to make it our primary color right here. You could have a secondary color, like an accent color or a highlight color, and make it that color. So for instance, what would be a complementary color that works well with this blue? That works pretty good, actually. I like that. And now this even stands out more because this color doesn't exist anywhere else in this document. Personally, though, I think I might revert back to the blue, but we'll see how it looks after we complete the button itself. So we used auto layout for a very simple button where it has text in a button container. Let's also add text and an icon in the button container. So let's talk about, before we get to that part, plugins. So a very integral aspect of Figma and also similar design software like Adobe XD is are the plugins that they've introduced in the past couple years. So there's a plugin ecosystem where third-party developers can create awesome plugins that do a ton of things. I'm a huge fan of plugins, mods, if we're even talking about gaming. Like the gaming community on PCs, by the way, used to be so much better than what it is today because you were able to mod everything. They allowed people to mod stuff. So it's almost like the same concept, except this is for design software and they're called plugins. So if you go to manage plugins right here, you can search for plugins up here. You can click on community. There's a lot of, and you can see files and then plugins. There's a lot of different plugins that you can use. Obviously, you've seen that I have a few that are installed already. And a whole course could be just done on showing and demonstrating awesome plugins for Figma and XD. So we're going to use a plugin that I already have installed. If you want to install it as well to follow along, you can search like I think it's called Iconify. There we go. So I have it installed already. Just click install and then go back to your document and we will click on plugins and Iconify. It'll take a little bit of a second to load and just type in like magnify right here and then find icons and they'll show up down here just as they have. It remembered my last search. And so you could choose, so you don't have to design this stuff from scratch. And you could completely design a magnifying glass with the tools up here, but why do that when people have already created them? So we're going to use this one and we're just going to place it right around here. And what's great is because these are SVG based, we can change the color and all that stuff. So let's click out of there. We'll make it white. And then we'll also type here and we're going to put in our work. All right. So now let's scale this down. It's probably going to be more like 24 or so. And we want these to be consistent, these two elements in here, consistently colored. So both are going to be white and not white and black because that just doesn't look good because it's not consistent. And so now we have our work right here in this button. We're going to take all three and we're going to hit Shift A. And as you can see, auto layout has been added. Let's also double click into here. And we want to change right here, the corner radius as it's called. We're going to make this a pill. So I'm just typing 50 and now it changes all these sides. Although if you wanted to control top, left, right, and bottom, you can do that right here by clicking that icon. And so after that, we need to make sure everything is centered here. We could do space between if you wanted to. Let's see how that looks right here. So if we change this, that's not working at all. So we have some work in order to get this to react how we want it to. So what we can do is we can come in here and we can make adjustments to the resizing portion of the individual elements inside of the frame. So where it says auto, we can adjust this and just like put 20 for now and adjust this right here. So let's say like the space between the magnifying glass and our work title, like right here, it looks pretty good. Also under mixed, you can see if we just change this to 0, it's going to take all of our padding away by default. Let's go ahead and make sure this is centered here first. And then let's adjust the padding. All right, so for the padding, it has an equal amount of padding all across here. So now if we adjust this, it's going to work how we want it to. And that way, if for whatever reason we want to resize this, it's going to be a lot easier for us to resize in the future. All right, so do I like this button? The color, that is. I kind of don't. I think this looks a little bit less busy because there's less colors. And I think this could really be a subjective preference, but ultimately to decide whether or not which color to use, you should engage in usability testing, split testing, in order to find out how your actual real users want to interact with it, because we can make all the assumptions in the real as designers, and many times we're wrong. All right, so I would say that's pretty good right here so far. So now we have this big empty space right here. What are we going to put in this empty space? There's a lot of different things. What's common? A common design pattern for what this is, by the way, this whole section right here is sometimes referred to as the hero section, is an illustration of some sort. It could be animated. There's a lot of things that you can do. When it comes to design in general, there's so many subjective preferences, subjective things that we could do that aren't considered necessarily right or wrong, and very few objective things that you can do. So with that said, let's go back to that UI goodies and we can come to illustrations, and we can choose to go, any of these illustration sites. Some of them are paid resources. For me, I'm going to choose, let's see here. Let's check out this one, free illustrations right here. So these are pretty cool illustrations. I think I want to use this one, like a storefront illustration. So if we click download storefront, I should pay for this WinRAR. It's been like only about 20 years. And we choose SVG. We'll take this asset one. I'm just going to put it onto my desktop. All right. And we are now going to go back, and we're going to take that asset one graphic, if it's somewhere, there it is, and we're going to put it just right here. Now, of course, we have scale and all that stuff to worry about. So hold shift, scale it down a bit. And now where you place this is really important. Like if we put it here, that'd be kind of strange. If we put it up too high, we have not enough white space. So where this is positioned has a strong consideration with where this is positioned as well. So if I put it right here, and notice how we inset it from this kind of invisible column right here, we could probably inset this one as well and bring it close. That way there's not a lot of white space between it. So we could do that. Or we could just increase the white space on the left and right and take these two elements and put them right there. Like that. So this works right here pretty well. It's very simple. It looks great. I like it. So now our hero section up here is done. We can always increase the space that we have. We're going to create one more section underneath, although in a real world scenario, you would want to create probably, a lot more content, but I don't want to get redundant here. So I'm going to break up the flow between this whole top section, like right here, and the next section down here. And you can do that by changing up the background. That's one such way. You don't have to, but I'm going to choose to do that. So we're going to take the rectangle tool, put it down there, and we're going to give this a color. We can make it completely white. So now our background stops along this edge. For me, I'm going to actually do something a tad bit different and make it just barely gray, or just barely white. It's off-white. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to use cards, and the cards are going to be white. The background of the cards are going to be white themselves. So you'll see what I mean in a second. I also want to kind of create a split layout here, a 50-50 column layout. So I'm going to duplicate this, Control D, move the one that I just, the new duplicate here in the center. I was hoping I would get a guide, but we'll leave it there for now, and we'll use our primary color right here for the background. Now, one thing I would probably adjust, there's not a lot of white space between the bottom of this element and this right here. So we'll take those two, hold shift, select both of them, and just scale them down, because you want to have a lot of white space and you want your design to be able to breathe. So I may even pull this down more and then pull this. All right, so now we're looking a little bit less cluttered and things have more room to breathe here. And so over here, I think I'm going to have, you could have like the Our Work section, like where you have your portfolio. You could do a lot of different things. For me, I'm just going to assume I'm like a two-person team, myself and then somebody else. And so I'm going to put two cards right here. And then I'm going to have like a weird kind of just interesting 3D element that's in the middle here. And then maybe just some lorem ipsum text on this side. You'll see what I mean in a second. So let's create these cards over here. So to do that, I'm going to create the background for them first. And again, to zoom up, Control your mouse scroll wheel to pan, space bar and left click. We're going to make this white. We're going to pull the edges in. All right. And we'll also give it a drop shadow. We'll adjust it again. And the opacity you can adjust right here. So I would never go that much opacity with a or full on, you know, contrast with a drop shadow. You want them to be very minimal. So I kind of like that. All right. Next up, let's go ahead and get some type going here. So for the type, I'm just going to left click, drag out the width of the container, and we will center it. And I'll put in Gary Simon. Now, why is that happening? Well, let's go over here and make sure that that is selected. There we go. So we hit the minus here to take that off. And also for our letter spacing, I'm just going to put back to 0 for default. And then we'll use our primary color, I believe, for that. All right. And then we're going to have like a title. So my name and then title underneath. So we'll duplicate that with Control D. And again, when it comes to visual hierarchy and your type, they should be separate from each other. So let's first put in the actual description. I'm going to say award-winning UI UX designer and educator, whatever. All right, so this looks bad because there's no separation between these two in terms of their design. They're styled exactly the same. So let's go ahead and make it like a dark, not a black, but like a dark gray, 3C, 3C, 3C. Let's do like 15 for the size and then regular. All right, that looks pretty good there. Now let's take all three of these, Shift A to auto layout it. And let's also go ahead and just change everything to 0 here. Now the reason there's like more on the bottom is because of the width or the height of that text container. So now it's just like this. So now what we can do is just increase the padding all around. And here's a good example where I don't want equal padding all the way around. Maybe just on the top and bottom I want to have equal padding, and then maybe a little bit less on the left and right. Excuse me. All right. So we'll have 9 there and 9 there. All right. So this is kind of, also let's go ahead and make sure that this is, we just click here in the center. All right. So now it's all centered up as we want it. And now I'm going to show you kind of a little bit more of an advanced trick that I learned for using auto layout and trying to get items that don't necessarily fit inside of the container. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. Probably hard to understand what I'm talking about. So let's take an ellipse and we're going to put a circle-based avatar or like a picture of myself. All right. So Shift Alt and then left click and drag, and we'll say it's going to go right around there. We're going to have a frame as well. So for the frame, we're just going to make a frame like around this size. Make sure clipped content is not ticked, because here's what happens. If I take this element and put it like right here, like slightly on top of it, as you can see, and then over here in the layers, I push this into the frame, you'll see how we can't see it. So that's why we want to make sure clipped content is off. Now we can see it even though it's inside of the frame. At this point, just in order to see, because this frame is invisible by default, if we give it a fill and just make it a color we can see, we will now get this positioned in here, and we'll move it to the top. And we want to make sure that the horizontal or X alignment is center here in the middle. So now this little icon changes, or the little dash lines, and then top as well. So it's positioned to the top and in the center. So now we can move this around and we know it's going to work. So now if we take this frame and we drag it inside of the frame 4 and we go ahead and move it inside of here, and we come out here to the height. We could either change it, make it larger, and by the way, we don't need to see it now, so we'll just make it white, or just completely get rid of the fill, which would be the better option. There we go. You could see that we can now kind of create the spacing here for this so that it will behave how we want it to, but we need to get the spacing right first. So I would say there's probably a little bit too much space between there. Now that's looking pretty good. We could always adjust this, push this down. And now if we adjust this position, what we don't want, like if we change the height of this, we don't want this to push down. We want it to stay up there. So what we can do instead is come out here, and for the white space at the bottom, we can increase this right around there. And then we can either adjust this down or adjust the size of this container. In which case, now there's a little bit too much, or so, something like that. All right, so now what we can do is we can take our plugins, and another one that we can use is Unsplash, and we can just get an avatar. I think there's specific plugins for just avatars, but this will work just fine as well. I'm just gonna put man, or you could put male, whatever. We'll use this person, click on it, and there we go. All right, so that works. Control D to duplicate it. So we'll have a secondary person, Jane Doe. We'll go ahead and go back to our Unsplash. Female, search. These are all like models and stuff. Okay, she looks like she could be like a computer designer person. All right, Jane Doe. All right. So I think that works pretty well right there. Of course, you probably want to change up the type here, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. So now let's go ahead. I want to show you another aspect here of Figma. If we go to plugins, manage plugins, we can go to community and files, under files. So there's some cool things happening here. These are things that are resources people have created that you can use and download and all that good stuff. 3D shapes for your design. This is actually pretty cool, and I use this. So I already have it. If I go back here to, let's see here. So if I go back to recent here, we can see I already have this. So if I open this in a new tab, you'll see how this 3D sort of asset document is structured. Examples and symbols. So we want to go to symbols. And if there's one that you kind of like that you want to use, like this one, we could double click into it, just copy it, Control C, and then just paste it in. What purpose does it serve? I mean, I don't really know, but I think it looks cool. And then perhaps as a part of your branding, you're using these simple 3D primitive shapes throughout your design. I mean, it makes perfect sense for a design related site. You can do something cool like this. All right, so I like that just out of the box. I'm not even going to change any other aspects of it. And then maybe over here we'll have some type. Again, we'll just take a block. We'll left click, drag out. All right, I'm just going to click some initial text, and we're going to left align it. And let's go ahead and use another plugin called Lorem Ipsum. I've installed that one. You can do a search and install it too. And then, you can have it generate 5 sentences, 5 words, paragraphs. We're just going to generate the 5-sentence option. And we're going to make this white. We're not going to make it bold. We'll make it regular. We'll increase the line height. Right around there. And maybe I will take this, extend it out just a bit so that I can extend this, right around the same area. And then again, I'll take everything and we'll get it recentered up here. All right. So this right here is pretty good in my opinion for just getting started on a home page of some sort. Of course, you would want to extend this down if this is a real business and add more information down here and maybe show some feature case studies or projects, a way to contact you at the bottom, a footer as well. But this isn't just for creating, this isn't a real project. I just wanted to demonstrate some of the basic ideas, but we're not done yet. So we've been working within a single canvas or an artboard, whatever you want to call it. Let's create a second page here. And that way we can show some prototyping. So for our second page, let's just do what it would look like if for like our work or whatever. So let's go ahead and we will duplicate that artboard, Control D. So now we have 2 artboards right here. By the way, something I did not cover at all yet. Let's back up. Components. So components are reusable elements. So like for instance, buttons. Buttons are elements that are used throughout a design multiple times, right? And if you simply duplicate a button without making it a component first and you want to make changes, then you'll have to make those changes to every single one. So like if you decide, oh, I don't want my buttons anymore to be white, then we just take this and maybe we'll make it our, this color and we make the text white. Well, guess what? I have to do that to this one as well. That's a lot of manual work, right? So instead we right click and choose Create Component. We duplicate it just like we did before, but notice how it's also purple outline and they're also purple over here. If we make a change to, say for instance, the background color for one, it's now going to change it for the other ones. Look at that. Isn't that awesome? Now what you can also do is you can override things as well in the child instances of the button. So if I double click this and I change this color, you could also do that. But if you go back to the main instance and you make adjustments to that, it's going to affect the child. See? Very, very cool. All right. So now let's just back all the way up. You can do this for multiple elements as well, like your whole header. We can make that a component. So where is my create component? There we are. All right, sorry, so now that is a component. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. And then now we have like a nav element that's going to show up on pretty much every page. If we had to make a change, we can just come here to the main, the main instance of the element or the parent of the element, and you'd be able to do so and make changes, and it will affect all of your artboards. Because when you're working on a real project, you might have 10, 20, 30 different artboards. So you want to make use of your components, just like you want to make use of auto layout as much as possible. So let's assume that this is going to be the Our Work page where we showcase work. So I'm going to get rid of all this stuff down here. I'm going to create a container with a rectangle that goes all the way from there or so, and we're going to make it white. We're also going to position it to the bottom. By the way, good idea to change this and make it Our Work. All right, so now we've created this like kind of like a sub-page container. We might want to make sure this is equal white space from the top and the bottom there. And now we can start, we could put something like Our Work done right. And then maybe we'll take the underline thing, we'll put it over here and underneath. And then we could still keep the same idea with the headline or subheadline. All right, so that looks nice. All right, so these would be like the basis of our subpage. We'd still have this background up here, but just for the navbar at this point. You can completely do that if you want. And then let's use another tool we haven't used, like the line tool. Very simple. You could use the other tool as well, the pen tool, to do this if you wanted to with 2 anchor points. Not a big deal. And instead of making this black, we'll just go real light or mid light or so, mid gray, just to separate 2 different columns that we're going to have here. And the other one, let's make sure we're using, let's use this text. So we'll paste that in here. And this time we'll make it something we can see because it's already on white. And we'll extend that out here. So we have some lorem ipsum text. Maybe there's just some description text right here or something like that. All right, so that looks good. And then inside of here, perhaps, we'll have a thumbnail gallery of projects. There's many different ways to do this, many different layouts. There's masonry layouts. You can have card layouts where it has like a thumbnail along with like a project title or case study title, whatever you want. I'm going to keep it pretty simple, and we're just going to use a rectangle like right here, perhaps. And then maybe we'll do another one. Maybe we'll make it smaller. And we'll push this like right here. And then maybe we'll have a second row. Let's just take these and duplicate them. And then maybe we'll push this one over here. And this one will be longer. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so now let's get in some pictures here. Let's go to Unsplash. I'm just going to type in web design. All right, so maybe that one will be this. This one will be that one. This one will be here. What else? Maybe this one will be this one. Obviously, I'm not being too specific on what I want to use. Obviously, these would be some type of pictures that would relate to the projects you've created. And that, look how solid that looks. Very good. And we knocked this out so quickly. And if you're in the position where you've tried to design things in the past and you just have a hard time making them look good, that's because you lack the UI design fundamentals, and that's why you need to go to DesignCourse.com and enter your email for once that is released, because we're working on it very hard. But anyhow, I digress. So now, what if we wanted to, how do we transition? Like if somebody clicks on our work or our work right here, how do we make it go to this page, right? So that's what the prototype tab's over here for. So when we switch to the prototype tab, when we click on an element, we don't have all the normal visual properties we can change over here anymore. We have the prototyping properties that show up. So whenever you click an element, you'll see you have a little arrow right there, or not an arrow, a circle where you can drag it to another artboard or canvas. So if we drag it over there, now the interaction details stay. Okay, we'll transfer to this new artboard on click, on drag, while hovering over this, while pressing, mouse enter, mouse leave, mouse down, mouse up. On click is what would make sense here in this case, so we'll leave it on click. And then navigate to here. Do you want any animation? You could do dissolve, a smart animate. You can move in, move out, push, or whatever. Let's just do a push for the heck of it. And you can then control the easings of this, which is how the animation is applied and how it flows during the defined duration. And right here is, by default, it's 300 milliseconds. So now, if we go ahead and hit play, we're going to get a new window that's opened up. and let it load because sometimes it takes time. And now if we click on our work, there we go. So that's based on the animations that we've specified. And also sometimes it will take a little time for other photographs and all that stuff to load up as well. So now we can also tie up our work button to the same area, and it will remember what you had previously. And then over here, how do people get back to the home page? Well, they would click on the logo. That's a common pattern as well. And get a quote. So if obviously we don't have some of these other pages made already, like services, we'd have to duplicate this board and design the services page, and then connect everything up like we did before. So we can also do Smart Animate, and that's a really cool and powerful feature. Let's say, for instance, that we wanted, whenever somebody hovers over one of these thumbnails, it will change the appearance of the graphic or the photograph, and then maybe it'll show some text on top of it, which is a common thing that we see. Let's go ahead and do that. So what we'll do is we'll take this artboard and we'll duplicate it. Let's go back to the Design tab, and let's go ahead and for the image, let's adjust something about it. Like, what is tint? All right, so it's tinting it a certain way. Temperature, saturation, contrast. So what we could do is we could right click and create component out of this, and then I can give it an actual color. So for the fill, we're just going to use this right here, and then we're going to double click into the image, and we're going to take the pass through down. So as we decrease it, we give it basically this blue tinted effect. So now we'll go ahead and we'll just put, we're going to reuse an element. Oops. Where's our magnifying glass? There it is. So we copied that, this part, the magnifying glass, and we're going to push it or paste it, Control V, right here, Shift and Alt, and there we go. So maybe that's what we want to show up. Maybe not text, but a little magnifying glass icon. So now if we go back to prototype, we can take this, drag it over here, and then this is going to be while hovering, and we will change it from push to Smart Animate, and we can just leave it right there. So now if we go play, allow it to load, and we hover over this, look at that. Look how good that works. So again, we can start navigating, click our work, hover over it, and it just works. Look how cool that is. All right, so we'll do one more thing here, because I know I've really given you a lot to consider here. Let's design a page for what happens when somebody clicks on like one of those thumbnails. So we'll design like a product page. So now let's duplicate this. We're just going to put it right here. All right, and so we'll say we're going to use Smart Animate for this again. So what I'll do is we will simply take these and we'll take this as well. All those items we just selected, and we're going to take paths through and put 0. All right, so they just kind of hide. This is going to change here to some company, whatever. I'll get rid of this right there. And then we'll put like client case study right here, and then we'll expand this out, this one. So we'll push it all the way from here to there, and then push it up, and maybe make it a little bit larger. And then underneath it, we'll have some type. We'll copy this one up there. We'll paste this right here. We'll expand this out and maybe make this a little bit larger and increase that line height respectively. All right, so we can imagine that, you know, in reality, this would be a much longer page because you would have a lot more information. But for now, just for our purposes, this is good. So just a very quick subpage design. So now let's go back to prototype mode, and we'll click on this, and we'll drag another one. So you can drag these multiple handles based on the interaction type. So this one is while hovering, as it's showing, but we can't use while hovering again, obviously. This one's going to be on click. We're going to navigate to our work down here, and it's going to be Smart Animate. So it's all ready to go. So let's go ahead and hit play. Let's click our work. We can hover. We can see that this is working. I can guarantee you though, this probably is not going to work. It's not going to work because why? When we hover over it, it's activating the other artboard, but we didn't create the connections from that artboard. So for instance, we're going to take this one and push it over here, and it's going to remember our last selection. We hit play, and now, I forgot there's a different setting in order to make this correct. So let me get that situated correctly. It's this one right here while hovering. We don't want that on here. There we go. So let's do this again. And let's go back to home, our work, hover works, click on this, and there we go. Now it's working exactly as we want it to. So our work, look at that. Awesome, awesome stuff. All right, so hopefully I've ignited a fire in motivation in you and inspired you to keep on learning UI, UX design. Now, if you really want to take this seriously, definitely go to DesignCourse.com and enter your email to be notified when I release this service. All right, it's going to help you learn UI, UX design from scratch through UI tests, live workshops, challenges, and full courses, all in this single service. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Again, if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.